Hey everybody, Mike with Gamefully Badly, and yes, before you say it, I know there's something wrong with my face. I accidentally screwed up my mustache, so I had to shave it off. It's in the process of coming back, but it's going to look funky for the next week or so. Anyway, on today's episode of Session 0, I have a question for you. Have you ever thought of a TTRPG environment where you have floating cities in the sky? Or where your base of operations might be an airship in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever thought about having to craft all of your own items, killing these fantastical beasts in this very wild, wild world? If you haven't, then I have the game for you. It's called Sentima Sundered Wilds, and I have the creators of that very game on the show today. So if you're interested in that, stick around. That interview starts now. Elena, Pavel, how are you?
Yeah,
I'm good.
I'm good.
Thank you for joining me. It's a very early morning for me, but there's a good reason because you guys are in two different parts of the world. Well, you're kind of in similar parts of the world, but not really.
And we're in the same time zone though, so
Yeah, right. So we're here to talk about you something that's actually it's new, but it's something that could be used with something else too. It's Tima's Sundered Wilds. Is that correct?
yes, that
Yeah.
is correct.
The main TTRPG, which you guys developed on your own, is a D20 based system, actually a 3D20 based system.
Yes.
Why don't you tell me about the lore behind the world?
So the core concept of our game is survival and various approaches you can take to survival. The world is very wild and mutated by 4 eldritch winds. These winds mutate everything they touch, that they blow through, in quite specific ways that are specific to the nature of the wind. And as the wind affected the cultures of this world, they adapted their own approaches to survival. And the core gameplay is to explore, gather, and craft. The exploration is underlined by the fact that the players will be gathering knowledge. Like, this is an in-game mechanic. The areas of knowledge that they attain are being tracked, and they are becoming experts in more and more fields. And they need to go out there and explore and actually experience the world. As they do that, they will come upon various ingredients. Ingredients are very flexible tool in this game, where they are essentially prompts, storytelling prompts, which you can mix and match in order to craft creative solutions. Rather than thinking about the gear in terms of stats, in our game, you mostly think of it in terms of, is this a solution and to what problem? And there is some epic gear that you will craft from the harvested carcasses of these terrifying behemoths that roam the land. You need to first track them down and hunt them, and then gather their mutated body parts, and you can make terrifying biological weapons out of them. But most of the crafting is done with things that you find in the areas around you in your immediate vicinity, either harvested from plants or fish or chopped wood. And all of these things have specific effects that you can use to base your inventions, gizmos on.
I like that idea of using the quest for knowledge as a plot hook. As that is the overall motivation for the players, is to go out and find and do and explore.
Yeah. So the setting itself is quite wild and unforgiving. So even though the system itself is quite light of rules, we still would like the crew of the explorers to really understand what kind of situations they're walking into and what kind of preparations they would need. So this is why the crafting system itself is able to be quite set so that they'll be able to or adapt what they already know with what they found to better face the encounters that they will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everything from wild weather, that weather is also important part of gameplay, where the weather is not your regular rain. It can either rain blood ice, or it can create floods of like life-giving energy, which makes the plants just bloom everywhere. So there's a lot of magical weather that at first may appear benevolent sometimes, but ultimately it grows into a terrifying storm of destruction one way or another that the players need to brace themselves for. That's just one of the ways that the world wants to get you. As I've mentioned, it's all about survival, and there can't be survival without high stakes. You are actually fighting for your life here.
So all these energies that you're speaking about they are directly affecting the creatures that they're
Yeah,
touching, and it imbues them with very specific abilities or sensibilities.
exactly. So there's four different kind of eldritch kings, and they manifest in very wild storms, and these storms have affected both the plant life and the creature life. So the sentient races have been affected by one or two main energies, which have created their main characteristics. So
So the last big mechanic that I have not mentioned yet is for social interaction, social conflict. The yellow races, the races of the yellow winds, are the most socially adept. And these are races like termites or scorpions. They thrive in society. And to create like system that supports social interactions without making it overly reliant on dice rolls, we actually tie it back to the areas of knowledge and character traits. Everyone will be rolling character trait, possibly choosing depending on the preferences of the campaign of the DM, but every character has a personality, and you can approach an NPC either with a specific character trait of your own, or basically choose a topic of conversation at which you are proficient. That is, that you have an area of knowledge for. So as you explore and actually learn the world, you are becoming a more like cosmopolitan, worldly person that is able to talk on more and more topics with people in order to match their interests. And if you can match person interests, they will like you and they will be fond of you and help you out.
Hmm.
This is for social conflict. There are no dice rolls. It's all about either finding a common language and common topics, maybe finding personality that resonates with yours, or if not, then you have to provide services and be useful to the person.
I like that aspect of the shared knowledge being a way to ingratiate yourself to somebody, and the fact of being useful to somebody is a great way to make friends, make nice with people.
yeah,
So that's.
and if you can't, hopefully you'll have some components, some gear, or some cards that you'll be able to give or craft. Right.
Yeah, and now that you guys have mentioned, having these components that you're gathering together, being part of your airships, I would imagine these airships can be pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
Uh,
But that is true of the whole setting. Trail guides will be able to as well have a list of body parts that they will be able to put together. So there will be Frankenstein behemoths that the explorers will be able to face. It's a very kind of Frankenstein way of building the ships and building the vehicles, and we do encourage explorers to basically take all the ingredients that they have and kind of talk the trail guide into accepting, that as items, consumables, weapons, armors, what have you.
So the trail guide is actually the DM. Okay, that's what I was thinking, but I needed to figure that out.
And the players are explorers.
Okay.
Yeah, this is relevant to the D&D monster manual that we'll be preparing. But all the creatures that we are making can be essentially broken down into a collection of body parts. And each body part augments them in a certain way and is directly influencing what abilities this creature has. How does the fight with this creature look like? And this is surface level because next step is the obvious conclusion that you can mix and match. If you want to go deeper into the monster creation, you can actually choose varied body parts from several creatures and make chimeras. And the behemoths are explicitly that in lore. They are mutated beyond recognition from many monster parts, and they are walking nature freaks.
Yeah, I can visualize this stuff. Man, I love imagination.
Right.
I mean, isn't it great? Just the idea of these floating biomes with various tribes on them and trying to survive, but doing it in such a macabre and bizarre way. It lends itself. It's rife for interpretation, and for any type of DM, if you have a good imagination, you can have a lot of fun with this setting.
Definitely, yeah. We've kind of recognized that ourselves that being the trail guide for the setting of Sentima will be a little bit more difficult than the straightforward. So we are making sure that we will be providing both the documents and the good how-tos and thus expose of items. And this is where the art as well will be so important to help the trail guides.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
in order to alleviate some of that pain of becoming the DM of Sentima, we, as the system design team, decided to go with like a concept of colors of Sentima. So there will be a basic layer of rules that are simple and easy to approach, and then some options, right? Some advanced rules opportunities that target specific areas of gameplay that Sentima is supposed to be about. So if you want more combat-oriented gameplay, you will take some rules from the red color of Sentima, and that will make the game more brutal, more about a visceral combat. Whereas if you want a horror-like system, you enjoy Cthulhu and Eldritch horror, you will go with blue color of Sentima, which provides additional rules, advanced rules for running a horror game.
That's brilliant. I mean, you can cater the game style to whatever the group is going for. Now, this is a TTRPG rule set that you've developed, but you can also use it as a monster manual for 5e or in conjunction with the monster manual for 5e. Why don't you explain that to me?
Yeah, so what is a setting, and it is its own world and contained so tabletop rule set. It's been developed foremost to use it for crafting and exploring. So that is kind of the main objective for the rule set that we have. But we will also be releasing a monster manual that will be able to use with 5e and Pathfinder as well. So it's going to be
Yeah, because I mean, you have some unique race combinations in here or species. There's a playable mantis.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right.
A scarab beetle.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I that jumped out at me was the walking reef. Can you dive into that for me? Because I'm really curious.
So our writers thought about a more threatening race. This is color coded in our setting, but essentially, several races are coded by their horror-like theme. And when thinking about the coral reefs, the writers mentioned, things like walking plague, so to speak, something that is a collection of small organisms and just spreads and floods the world of the living. They are quite creepy in their writing, and the fact that they have scientific bent only makes them more like crazy scientists experimenting on other races.
Okay. Yeah, that's not what I was expecting, but that's awesome. So now the main setting and the TTRPG rule set that you've developed, you mentioned it's all about exploration and crafting. Now I saw something mentioned about Sky Islands as well. So I imagine there's some air travel and some crazy places that you're going to visit.
So Sentima itself is a reality where long ago there was an Earth crust that after a cataclysmic event blew up into chunks. And these chunks are what has created all of the floating islands in the atmosphere. They float on different levels, have a variation of biomes, and a very large array of both flora and fauna, depending on what kind of which islands. And the tribes there have developed different ways of traversing both the islands themselves and between the islands. So
Mhm.
it's going to be different depending on what kind of tribal ways you play yourself and which ones you're going to interact with. The aim is to either build a ship yourself or use tribal affections to cast riots. So it's a very kind of it's difficult to traverse, but it's not impossible, and it's going to be a big part of the experience itself.
Well, that's awesome. So what about the crafting aspect of it? Because UB is short for.
Driven Firebox is his full name.
And as you explained to me, kind of pre-interview, he is basically the progenitor of all sorts of fun stuff that he ends up bringing back from different realities.
Correct. So he's the one who's visited these different settings, and he's the one who's doing the information and presenting the setting itself. He's not a part of the play itself, but he's our in-house mascot that is basically the one who introduces all of the wonderful settings that we will have even after Sentina.
Essentially, we found that this setting is very wild, very unorthodox in many ways. And artwork is one of the best ways to communicate several like main themes to allow the players to subconsciously understand what this is about. Because it's sometimes difficult for a game master to simply explain. It's usually better to show rather than tell. And the artwork, we hope, will help that immensely.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's one thing if I go and I tell someone that this is a plumbus, but if you've never seen what a plumbus is, it doesn't really make any sense to you. So, and that's a little plug for Rick and Morty. So now what I'm imagining is all these fantastical playable races and creatures you're going to shuttle into your monster manual for 5e. Is that what I'm understanding?
Essentially, we found out that it's very easy to fall into a sort of elitist view on game development as you are developing a new game system. And we decided that it's important to kind of bring this world closer to the general public and hopefully show them that this hobby is very wide. It allows for immense diversity of gameplay, and in the end, you don't need to box yourself in those one or two most played games, but rather than assume that no one wants to play other games than say D&D. We want to show to the D&D fans that there are awesome things to experience outside of their main game. And we believe that once we have built the whole setup, the system, and the lore, we will be able to translate some of that magic into D&D as well. The key concepts of survival or investigative hunting or crafting to create creative solutions to your problems. I believe that other systems can benefit from that outlook as well.
Absolutely. I think one of the best things about being a DM is being able to take bits and pieces from other games and bring them into yours. And so I don't know many people, and I don't know audience, you can comment down below, but that play just stock D&D. They don't make any alterations to it because I know I make alterations to my worlds all the time. I make alterations to the rules all the time. You're basically saying, this is awesome. It's not D&D, but this is what it would look like in a D&D type
Yeah.
setting. And that I think is going to open up people's minds to start looking outside of D&D for inspiration, or looking outside of the D&D system as far as a gaming platform. So I love all that. I think it's a brilliant idea. Very smart.
We definitely barely mentioned the ships. So just to make it clear, the ships will be game mechanic. And we want the ships to be weird as well, rather than simply, being made out of wood and metal and just flying out of nowhere. They will be made mostly from the parts of those enormous behemoths that you need to hunt down and then harvest their body parts and like craft them and put them together in order to, for example, create sails from the wings of a huge fly, or create boarding equipment with like crab appendages, things like that. But ultimately, the ultimate goal is to allow the players to build a flying hive, essentially. So the ship will be their base of operation and
Oh.
the goal where they can grow and possibly and make a society, a small village, basically, out of. But we definitely see this as an like end game goal. At first, you will have to figure out how to hitch rides, or how to maybe sneak on the ships of other groups, societies, etc. Because we need to hunt those behemoths first.
When you talk about the ship being your base of operations, that makes it even more epic.
Definitely. And, for us as play-wise, for the explorers themselves, the playable characters don't necessarily evolve past the skills that they train and investigate in. So there is a lot of focus on what kind of equipment that you've crafted that you will bring along. So this is why the ship is a very big part, because it's aimed to be both the rest stop in between the islands, but as well your helping hand is better preparing for both the surroundings and the next adventures.
Wow.
So unlike a lot of games these days, this is a classless system. And rather than focusing on who your characters start off as, we want to allow you to build your character over the course of the gameplay by choosing equipment. So your abilities that you have at your disposal will come from the gear you have, and most likely that you've crafted. So you are, in a very direct sense, building your own character through the things that you make. And of course, what was mentioned before, an important part is just experiencing the world and your character becoming knowledgeable in a field, in an area of knowledge, will be a tremendous help during an investigation period, where investigation techniques are crucial in order to, for example, hunt the monster. You need to know its weakness, or this is such a terrifying creature that it will just defeat you outright if you do not approach the battle with correct knowledge, with tools for the job. You are basically a professional, right? So you are a monster hunter in a way, and you need to come with correct tools for the job. Yeah.
You've mentioned several times how wild this world is and how survival is really the key. And so when you're hunting, not only you're using your knowledge to do your hunting, but the things that you hunt are the actual materials you need to go ahead and use to create the things that you need to further on, to
Yeah.
go further with. So I mean, it's very cyclical. So I and actually very tribal in a lot of ways when you think about it.
Yes, it is. We even call our races tribes. We don't
Mhm.
use the words race. They are all tribals.
The one thing I did notice, it seems like, well, at least the races that I saw, all these are insectoid
Yeah,
based. So is
That,
that basically the gist of it?
very much. And it's as well for the creatures and the behemoths. So there are a couple that are not insectoid based, but those ones are. We had one fungi tribe, and then we have the coral tribe. There will be others as well, but the big kind of idea here is, what if there was a world where there is these different energy mutations and they just went wild on the insects part of the fauna. So this is where we also saw a lot of characteristics that he used in developing these tribes. For example, the one of the tribe, the ant tribes, is affected by the red energy, which means they're very industrial, they're very aggressive. And, spiders, one of the tribes is affected by the blue energy, which is characteristic of smoking and hiding in the darks and this kind of gloom. So we we found it's with a very good combination.
So now all these floating islands have their own different biomes, I would imagine, correct?
yes.
Are any unique biomes that we've not thought about before?
Well, the biomes themselves are split into mostly three different categories. So the islands themselves are situated on one of three layers, what we call them here. So the top layer is the one that has the most weather and it's most affected by energy storms. And it's very abundant in life and therefore also creatures and behemoths and dangers. The middle layer is where probably explorers will be starting. It's a little bit of a middle ground. It's not as aggressive, but it still has a lot of tribes and societies and creatures themselves. And then we have the bottom layer, which is closest to the crust. And that one is family called it that. Well, we've been calling it the graveyard, which means that it's less affected by sunlight and light itself, and it's where you would probably find creatures who are very much into sneaking. There's a lot of competition, but there's also a lot of life in its own way. So you would imagine you would start in the middle and then either go up and down or across. And the all of the airships were building vehicles as well, and encounters while you're traveling as well. So it's whichever way you go in the 360 degrees, it's gonna be new encounters and new adventures, basically.
That's really exciting. So now, when you look at the world, what is left of the actual planet itself? I mean, there is that where that third level.
No, below the third level is the magma. So since there is no crust, there is a basically lava and condensed magma bits. And we're not going to spoil too much, but
Right.
maybe in later stages there will be some visitational points there as well. But yeah, it's yeah, basically a lot of lava and
You don't want to go there initially, I don't think.
yeah, the next layer is bad enough. So we'll just start
Right.
there.
And you've talked about playtesting. So you've been playtesting this quite a bit. Are any of these playtests? Do you have any of them been on a YouTube channel or anything like that? Have they all been private?
Well, we've had quite a lot of them. We've tried to mix it up as much as we can. We've had live ones, and we've had all of us have play tested where with people. There's been in mostly in shops. I mean, RPG shops. We do have one channel that is going to be posting soon.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And there are going to be as well everything from one shots, and another channel is doing a 4-part episode. So
Oh, very good.
will be a longer campaign, and that is all going to be released around the same time as we will be pre-test pack. cool for everyone who wants to try. We have developed a specific island that is to be a one shot, around 4 hours of play. That is just a good mix of what we would really want to convey with the setting
Sure.
and the rule. Yeah.
As I get all this information, kind viewer, I will have it down below in the link. So
Yep.
if you watch this and there's not a lot in there, it's because I don't have it yet. So come back and check on it frequently and make sure that you get those up-to-date goodness about any playtesting, and the Kickstarter and everything else will all be down below. So I really appreciate both of you coming on and talking to me. I love this concept for this game. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Can't wait for your Kickstarter. I'm right there for it. And again, if anyone watching wants more information, look down below. I'll have links to everything. And thank you again for spending some time with me.
Thank you so much.